Hey, we're about to get started, but we're gonna do some introductions and stuff. So if you wouldn't mind just staying off video for a second, Kim's gonna do the intros and then we'll pass it on to you. Let me show you the room if you want to
Stay
see
on or stay off. Sorry.
the room. Okay. Okay, so
Oh wait, no, did you want me to stay on or stay off?
sorry, what?
Oh, did you want me to stay on or off video?
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. 1 second. It's probably my setup. Okay, try again.
Oh, sorry, I was just asking if you had said like stay on or stay
Nope,
off
I
video.
still don't have your audio. Box. Try one more time.
You hear me?
Nope. Okay. Okay, try one more time.
Can you hear me now?
Sorry.
It's okay.
We're not able to hear audio through the it's audio. Same as microphone. Same as system amper box. Let's see, Creston. Try one more time.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Okay. Well, Britt, when you're going to be presenting, I'm just going to hold the mic to the laptop in the most way it is.
Okay. Can you hear me now, at least off the laptop?
Okay, so I just stand here. Yeah. Britt, if you wouldn't mind turning off your video until we get to there. Okay, great.
All right, cool. And just to make sure y'all can hear me, right?
So
I guess y'all can hear me.
welcome everybody. Oh, we're gonna turn it up. Okay, welcome. Welcome everybody, and welcome to the people who are joining us. And for you all who are joining us virtually, you have missed our wonderful social time of food and desserts and getting to know one another. But we are going to start our program. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight at Dillard University for this really special event called Pattern Recognition, Recognizing Ourselves and Others Inside the Indigenous Community. This event is held in observance of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation's National Day of Racial Healing, an initiative dedicated to fostering unity, understanding, and reconciliation across communities. Tonight's gathering would not have been possible without the generosity and collaboration of many remarkable organizations and individuals. First and foremost, I want to thank the Foundation for Louisiana for their generous funding. Their commitment to promoting equity and supporting cultural preservation has been integral to making this evening happen. We also extend our gratitude to the New Orleans Foundation for Francophone Culture, a remarkable organization based in the French Quarter. It's dedicated to revitalizing Louisiana's heritage cultures of French, Creole, and Indigenous languages. Through their innovative programs and unwavering support, they champion languages and traditions that define our shared histories. A heartfelt thank you goes to the Bvlbancha Public Access, a unique media channel amplifying Indigenous voices and preserving the rich stories of the Gulf South. Their work ensures that the narratives of non-federally recognized tribes in Louisiana are accessible, celebrated, and heard. We are deeply grateful to Dillard University. Oh, that's a tell. We scratch. We are deeply grateful to Dillard University School of Humanities for their generous support in providing this beautiful venue. This space represents Dillard's longstanding commitment to fostering dialogue, education, and cultural exchange. Special thanks to Mika Hale, a junior visual arts major here at Dillard, whose creativity brought this event to life through her stunning flyer and the booklets that you have here that you can use for your sketching. Mika's work exemplifies the talent and dedication of Dillard students. A warm thank you goes to Gloria Toth for the delicious mock chew, a dish inspired by the flavors of Native American and Creole cuisines, and to April Vandergriff, whose sweet potato pies that we're enjoying and cookies are adorned with Adinkra symbols and Southeastern Indian symbols, and they are as thoughtful as they are tasty. We are also grateful to Dillard University's Office of Facilities, Auxiliary Services, and ITT, whose behind-the-scenes work ensured the seamless execution of this event. Tonight's gathering is part of the New Alliances Project, a collaborative among Dillard, Bvlbancha Public Access, and the New Orleans Foundation for Francophone Cultures. This initiative emphasizes the deep connections between Native American and African descended communities in Louisiana. Born from the shared histories of forced migration and colonialism, this initiative has a name that comes from a blending. New means we in the language of Wolof. Nua means to walk in Uma, and these two words together symbolize the journey of our walking together to build understanding and solidarity. And alliance is partnership in French, so this is a reflection of our creolized identity. Through interactive art and storytelling and dialogue, pattern recognition invites us to reimagine cultural divides as bridges. It's fostering collaboration and honoring the legacies of our ancestors. Together, we explore the aesthetics and symbolism of Southeastern Indigenous and West African cultures, learning how these vibrant traditions continue to shape our lives and our identities. Thank you all for being part of this meaningful journey, and let us begin this evening of dialogue and doodling and discovery as we walk together toward healing and unity. We are blessed with several people this evening to help us initiate and sanctify this event. Janet Sula Evans will bring us a prayer. Nana Sula was born and raised in New Jersey and is a resident of New Orleans since 1996. She is a multifaceted cultural practitioner, educator, and healer. She's a student of Ifa Orisha Mysteries since 1985 and the Ghanaian spiritual tradition since 1992. And she's authored an incredibly powerful work, Spirit of the Orishas, which is a book and has a soundtrack. And she published that in 2014. It's a Yoruba language preservation project. She holds a Bachelor's of Arts in African Studies and English Literature from Rutgers and has participated in a lot of projects across Africa as a volunteer. She is the founding priestess of the Temple of Light, Ilde Koin, a Mommy Water Temple in New Orleans, the Musician's Village. And she's a medicine queen with the Black masking Indian tribe, the Mandingo warriors, the spirit of Fayaya. So without further ado, I could go on and on. Sula, please come forward. Hold this for you.
First of all, thank you. Thank you. I know I have to stand here for the virtual audience, but I just want to project out to all of you that are here present as well. Thank you, Kim, for your lovely introduction. And we want to start this session calling in the power of our ancestors and really recognizing, why don't you just hold this? And we'll bring it. Thank you. Excuse me, we're getting it together. So, yeah, I want to give, thank you, yes. I want to just give thanks and praise and acknowledge the National Day of Racial Healing. We want to make sure that we acknowledge racial healing around the planet. We want to make sure that we are honoring the 4 directions, north, south, east, and west, and all of our collective ancestors that are here today. Many, many rivers run through all of us that are in this room, and we acknowledge and respect all of them, all of you virtually as well. This is a day that we want to acknowledge each other's humanity and really marry ourselves to the idea of love and respect for each other. As we move forward in this chaotic time on the planet, we pray for unity, we pray for understanding, we pray for respect. We pray that we can understand each other and view each other and look at each other in the eyes again. We pray that we can acknowledge each other's ancestry without any prejudice or anything like that, any divisions. Like the people say, let there be no divisions among us. And it is what we must live by in this time. So no matter what it looks like, we're praying for light. So we want to call up the spirit right now. And you can just hold on. So in one perfect love, we come. We ask for peace among the planet, on the planet. We ask for peace among the people. We ask that all the names of God be honored, north, south, east, and west, and whatever names we call the divine. We ask that the divine come to help us on this planet, to build us up, to keep us strong as a people, and to bring peace to this planet. We ask for an end to war, racism, hatred, all those things that divide us as people. We ask for an end to those things today and every day. We say Ashe. You can say Ashe, I go, and so it is, or whatever you choose to say. You can either say whoop, whoop, whatever you want to say, because it's an exclamation point. So we pray for the respect of our elderly, all those with gray hair, all of us that are elders in the making. We ask that we have honor and respect on every road that we walk on, and that every elder be respected for the crown that they wear and the years that they have spent on this planet. We give you homage and we pay you respect. We want to give thanks for the new life coming in, the babies that are coming into this planet at this time, all the new life coming in. That's our hope, that there is going to be something beautiful in the next generation, because they keep coming. So we give thanks for the new babies coming and all those, and we give thanks for the children inside of us, because we are children. We are always learning and forever growing. So we ask that our children, our child self be honored. And we thank you for this gathering today. We honor the natives and the indigenous people that walked on this land before we ever came here. We honor the ancient Africans. We say, Dasio minami wokonu. Do we have the permission from the ancients to move forward? And then we say, Ejo kublima. Say that, Ejo kublima. That means it is from ancient days. It is in the God language. It is from ancient days that we have done this. It is from ancient days that we have called on the power of our ancestors. And it is in ancient days that we will bring the power of our ancestors forward. So we thank you right now for all that ever was. We thank you for the strength of all of our collective ancestors. And may we continue to do good on the planet and bring light to the planet. We say Ashe, we say our goal, and so it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Joseph Darrensburg is going to honor us and grace us. He's a native of Bvlbancha and a tribal member of the Atakapa Inhak Alligator Band. He embodies the rich cultural blend of Indigenous, African, and European Creole heritage. Raised in the historic Treme, he is a multifaceted artist and cultural preservationist. As a singer, violinist, and percussionist with Lacenel, Darrensburg honors the Creole diaspora through music inspired by resistance and protest poetry. Named after the 1845 anthology of poetry by free people of color in New Orleans, Lacenel is a technologically acoustic ensemble that weaves historical and contemporary influences to preserve and celebrate Creole culture. And with that, He's gonna honor us with a song.
Hola. My name is Joseph B. Darrensburg, and as he said, I was born in Jermaine. I have to honor this land and acknowledge growing up on this campus. My father worked here for 21 years and also 31 years at Leidenheimer Bakery, 2 full-time jobs, raising 5 kids, sending us to school here. My youngest sister graduated, watching him hand her degree to her. My cousin, Jean-Luc Petrie, who's Tunica Biloxi, president of the Native American Land Center in Boston, with the MLK, MIT scholars. God acknowledge Coach Billy Ray Hobley, and got to acknowledge Vic Vavasor, Dr. Dent, Jesse Dent, Milton Sherman, and Matthew Henson, who was the first African American who went to the North Pole. So I grew up on the Henson summertime, growing up on campus, looking at his clothing at the North Pole that he wore, and he met and married an Inuit woman and learned the Inuit language. And there's a woman named Naomi Drake in New Orleans who worked for Vital Stats from 1949 to 1965, whose name is stamped on my mom's birth certificate. And I have to tell you, people do an erasure of you and do a paper genocide. And I just want to say, you know, I'm very fortunate to have direct links to my land, to my people, but I don't want you to give up in your pursuit of finding your elders that are right there, but they've been veiled and erased from you. So I dedicate this to you all. Haya o haya, hahane, hahane, haya o haya. Ishan hoka Bvlbancha. Ishan hoka mayon. Ishan hoka Bvlbancha. Ishan hoka mayon. Beni nakato pistache. Nakiki kam ish. Ishakiti yokiti ish. Oti akon la makapelon. Yakikyakan tipikil u. Oktiwe ang nung ush. Oktiwe ang nung ush. Kun kanon shiwa. Si makuktu kau. Ya. Bvlbancha imotable. Hahane, haya o haya. Hahane, haya o haya. Hahane, haya o haya. Hahane, haya o haya.
Wow, Joe, thank you so much for that. That was really great. And thanks everyone for being here tonight. I know when we were talking about organizing this gathering, we were like, okay, let's start this at 7. And then I was like, Kim, if we put 7 on the invitation, like, I know what kind of time scales we're dealing with in this room. Can't run on Indian time. So yeah, really glad we're all here and glad we all made it. And I'm really excited to introduce Britt Reed, which I don't have my paper, so I'm gonna go grab my paper. So when Kim called about this project and we've been kind of collaborating it, the first person who came to my head was like, oh man, it would be really great if we could get Britt to talk with us today. And so we called her and she was available, so we're really excited to have her speak. Britt is inspired by mound building cities that exist in the Southeast and Midwest prior to 1300 AD, as well as Choctaw and other Southeastern tribes that descended from those cultures. She is a member of the Oklahoma Choctaw Nation and works with beadwork and uses digital illustration to utilize history, stories, and designs of the mound building era. Along with her work as an artist, her full-time is as a tattoo artist, and particularly tattooing Southeastern Indigenous tribal community. So I want to welcome Britt. Got to do a little DJing here to get Britt on here. I feel like technology is moving so much faster.
Oh, were you able to hear me?
Oh, yeah, we can hear
okay,
you
cool.
now.
Okay, sweet.
Let me
Before I was
see.
like, oh no.
Let me see if we can see you now. Okay.
Hey, Halito. Though I will make an
So-
adjustment. I'm
Let me
many
turn
things,
it up
but
then.
I'm not yet a tattoo artist. And I'm not a member of Choctaw Nation, but I was adopted out. So I'll give my introduction real quick too. So Halito, Sahachafia, Brit Tata Mitchell, adoptee, Mitcha, unenrolled Thea, and beadwork artist, digital illustrator, and founder and team member of Inchonwa. So hi everybody. I don't know if you could hear that. So I'm Britt Reed. I am Black and Choctaw, but I'm not but I'm unenrolled and adopted out. And I'm a digital illustrator, I'm a beadwork artist, and also I'm one of the founders of the Inchonwa Project, which seeks to help revitalize Southeastern, specifically Muskogean traditional tattoo practices.
So we were going to run this a bit as an interview, so I'm going to just ask Britt some questions. If you also would like to ask Britt some questions, we can run around the mic. But yeah, just to get it started, Britt, how did you get to start doing what you do, or what was your journey into tattooing?
Well, I'll try and keep it short because it's kind of a long answer. But basically, I was adopted out as a little kid at 5 months old. And so growing outside of my community in Dallas, I just grew up assuming that everybody knew our history and our designs and, had roles and stuff like within our communities. And I felt like because I didn't grow up within it, that I was like, kind of left out. So when I had the opportunity after art school to go to college in Washington State, because I was in a tribal program, I was like, it's cool that we're in Coast Salish territory, but I want to study my tribe and just take advantage of that time. So that's kind of where I started diving into some of like the learning how to research. And then I continued that in my when I went to go get my master's of public administration with tribal governance concentration. And so I kind of switched from learning about general topics like federal Indian law and things like that to specifically looking at both Indian Child Welfare Act, because again, there was issues there with me of it not being utilized, and then also specifically with food sovereignty. But in Washington State, Choctaw Nation will come about every 2 years, and then all these Choctaw people will come out of the woodwork by the hundreds, which is really incredible because a lot of people were like, I'm the only Choctaw up here. And then they'll kind of do a little song and a dance, and they'll be like, there's your culture, bye. And they'll be gone for like 2 years. And it just didn't sit right with us up there that we didn't have a community and that the tribal nation wasn't willing to basically be there to help the Choctaw people up there. So we're like, well, we should just do it ourselves. So we began meeting together up there as a community, and then we began to talk about different things like our history and stuff like that. And so the friends that I developed during that time, we began talking about tattoos and stuff like that. But it wasn't until I had a friend, Holly, who started drawing them on her face, that we were like, oh, this is serious. We should, get together and actually like make an effort to figure this out. Cause again, like the nation wasn't doing that work. So, and maybe that's just like my background as an activist and a couple of us were like, community organizers before. So we kind of had that like vibe about us. We're like, well, we could just do it ourselves. We could figure it out as a community. And so that's kind of how it happened. And for the people that were initially early on involved in the project that did have ties to the nation, they had asked the tribal leadership if they would be interested in the revitalization of it. And they said no. So it kind of fizzled out and then came back when a group of Choctaw women, Two Spirits and Femmes got together and we are like, no, let's actually figure this out. And so that's kind of how Inchunwa as a project began. And then we began in 2021. We decided to do a podcast to kind of relay the information that we found because it was very difficult to find a lot of information. And so that's kind of the way that we've like disseminated the information through the community and through seeing how art has affected the normalization of the designs and just being able to like see people in a modern time and also like ancestral time of what they could have looked like with tattoos. That helped us, but also helped our community to kind of be like, okay, yeah, like I can see myself with tattoos. And so that's kind of like the TLDR version of that. And so we're just now getting into, as a project within Chunwa, though, you know, things have changed rapidly within a week, so we'll see what happens. But our plan was to continue in the second phase where we were trying to figure out how to have a culturally appropriate tattoo apprenticeship program. And our plan was to work with our mentors this year who are licensed tattoo artists that are Southeastern to kind of figure that out, but we will see.
Thanks, and I feel like the your journey into it is something that we're all familiar with, where it's like we understand we have some sort of relation with these symbols and objects, and we're not quite sure how to get started with that. And it sounds like what you have done, a lot of your work was relationship building with these symbols, but then also research. Could you tell us a little bit about both of those processes? And, you know, if we were interested in getting started and understanding some of these symbols, what are the books or relationships that's like the first step in for us?
Yeah, and I have to say before I get too much into it is that as things progress, like there's different conversations. Like I guess the thing I'll say about it initially is that one, it's like even through colonization, even when for us the French and the English for other tribes and the Americans kind of squashed our efforts of having tattoos and utilizing our designs, like we never stopped expressing ourselves as a people. And so there's still designs that are, you know, like 1800s, 1900s, and more modern ones that people utilize all the time, which I feel like are more accessible, I guess I would say, for a couple of reasons. One is that I feel like these don't hold as they're, I would say like the Choctaw ones are Choctaw specific and probably should just still be used for Choctaw people or representing Choctaw people. But the older ones, there's some debate about whether they should be utilized at all, the ones that are coming from our mound building times, because a lot of these things were dug up from items that were burial items. And so some people say, you know, these should have never came out the ground. There's things that should have never been published. And some people say like shouldn't use them at all because they have power, they have spirit. And I think when coming from like a Christian kind of world perspective, it's kind of hard to like understand about these things. But like, you know, when something has a spirit or has like power like that, you want to be careful because you don't want to kind of like bring anything on you. So you want to just like, you know, handle things that you know how to deal with. I don't know if this makes sense at all, but basically people, you know, just being like, be very careful with these things. But I will say that, so like for myself, sorry, I got ADHD. So it's going to be in a circular kind of way. It's not going to be linear. For me and my reconnection journey, I started off, when I started beating Choctaw stuff, like just starting with those initial symbols that are kind of more modern, your diamonds, which I feel like it's like that joke from Portlandia where they're like, put a bird on it, like Choctaw Nation and Mississippi Band is like, put a diamond on it. I'm like, we got more than that, but okay. Or like the X's and O's for stick balls. Or, you know, some of these older designs that might have been used, like the half diamond design that was used either, like Buster Ned says, like it's the road of life that you go on as you go on and off of it, or like an elder says, the road that connects our communities. Those are the kind of designs that I began with. And I don't know, I think those designs are cool. I don't think they'll hold the same spirit personally. So like I said, I think that those are like more like open source for people to use potentially. But yeah, then as I went along, I kind of wondered why we were just preserving things and not making new things. That really struck me, like across like whether it was songs or whether it was dances or whether it was designs we had or anything we did, just felt like we just kept trying to preserve this idealized past. So I started looking into the mound building designs too. And I also began doing artwork with it because I felt like, again, like it wasn't something with the tattoos, at least, that we saw a lot. And so it's hard to visualize a future for a lot of our relatives if they can't physically see it. And so the making artwork became important for me. And so that's where I began working with the designs a lot more. And I started initially with this book that we kind of jokingly call like the Bible. Because it seems like every person that's involved in the revitalization of Southeastern designs and this like renaissance that has been going on kind of use that as like a base book. I don't know if it showed up my thing, but it's called Sun Circles in Human Hands. It's a red book. Um, and it's the analysis is crap. I wouldn't bother reading the text of it. But in terms of like the resource of like looking at designs that came from the shell carvings, the gorgets, the pottery, some of the copper work and stuff like that, is a really good starting place because it has it there. So it's like a cool reference. But there's other books, like I said before, like Choctaw Music and Dance that talks about some of those more like modern designs that you'll see on the Choctaw clothing. And then also there's another book from the Mount Belaying Times too that's Hero Hawk and Open Hand, which is also another good one. Which ones I recommend. But I think everything has like relationality, everything has spirit, right? And so one, I think that the spirits at the time thought that like these are things that need to come back. And so this is why we see some of these things starting to come forward and catching on. But I feel like individually, it's kind of like plants and stuff too. Like you have to start working with them to get to know them, to have them kind of speak to you. And that's kind of like a person, right? Like you can see someone across the room, but just because you see them there doesn't mean that you know anything about them. Like you have to go and talk with them. You have to go and like get to know them, spend some time with them to be able to like understand it more. And so that's kind of the designs as well. So I try and give the word of caution just because the word of caution was given to us. And, sometimes not great to fuck around and find out. But maybe if there's like, sorry, I'm not supposed to curse, my bad. Um, but, like I feel like there's some things where it's like, if spirit is talking to you, then like, who am I to say that that's not something for you? And so if some like, calls to you, then maybe like take some quiet time and work with it for a while to get to know it. Um, yeah, I don't know if that answers the question. It was like very circular.
Oh, that's a very well-rounded, I would say, answer, very circular. I think my next question is thinking about your personal journey with this. Wait, no, before that, I want to talk about like the medium that you're interested in, which is tattoos. And when I think about the things that I do, it's usually in pencil and it's usually a sketchbook. And I usually look at it once, doodle it, and then maybe I'm the only person who ever sees it. I feel like tattoos are on the very opposite side of the spectrum of that, where it's like it's something that's so permanent. And it's meant to be visible on you. What is it to work with that kind of medium in relation with this like deeper research and relationship building that you're doing with your culture?
Yeah. I would say, and again, I can't say that like I'm an artist yet. I think thinking about apprenticing is something I was definitely considering, and had a conversation with Amy Colston, who's Natchitoches, who was in town a week or two ago about it. But in terms of focusing on it as a craft in general and working with people with it, I'm bearing them myself. Like I have them on my hands, I have like my tattoo there. Tattoos for us, I think, is something that is a spiritual thing, but also is a way that we communicate, right? Like before we had a written language, there's documentations about how we would use this to identify one another and be able to speak to, like who we are, what we've done, in terms of like feats and stuff, but also like what are our roles and responsibilities and placement within our communities. And so in a way, they're kind of like our name, but also a visual language before, we had, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And people used to go ahead and like put these on war clothes, put these in trees, to tell people like where they're meeting, things like that. And so it's not just an adornment on your skin, it goes beyond that, I think. And it's been really interesting seeing it coming back, and even though we're really early into it, seeing people in public where you can see people where people will look at your tattoos and be like, oh, you're so and so, and that being like their way to like identify you, kind of in like an older way now. um but I think that each medium has a way of being able to create a kind of healing. um One of the interesting things I think about the tattoo also is that how to talk about it. It's kind of hard for me to talk about like the spiritual things. So like some things you put into words, some things it's hard. Um, but yeah, I mean, like they talk about there's a podcast called Transformative Marks Podcast, which is really cool because they talk directly with people who are tattoo artists, who are indigenous tattoo artists from across the world. And they talk about um the design, but also the process itself, right? Like a lot of times when we see the tattoo, we see the end process, but in being able to experience that pain, it helps you to work through trauma that you might hold in your body and to be able to release that. But also, having gone through that pain helps you to know and like, be able to carry yourself later on in life, like because you've gone through that pain. Like you have something to draw upon later on when things get hard, right? Because you've gone through that, you've experienced that, you're like, I can make it through this. There's some instances where people have said also that the tattoos have literally like healed some stuff. Like Kelly Gonzalez talks about how in 2020 when she got her head tattooed up here by her partner JP, some of it like she was like writhing around in pain, but there was one part in there where he was tattooing, it was like felt like really, really good. And she used to get migraines, and she said, I've never had a migraine like that since. And there's been other people that have said that too. But I think the permanentness of, I don't know if that's a word, but I'm gonna use it. How permanent these markings is really interesting, especially in the context that we're starting to find ourselves in now. Um, Being able to mark yourself and making yourself so identifiable, I think is something that's a really big commitment, even in times of peace. Because people, sorry, my friend are like blowing up my phone now. But like people had to worry about whether they'd be able to get jobs or lose jobs, what their families might think about that, loss of relationships and stuff like that. I think um what a weird time we're in. But to make yourself more identifiable these days, there's a reason why the ancestors used to either stop practicing this or put it in places where people can't see it. And so I think that especially now, especially when you mark your face, you mark your hands, places where people used to call those, what were they called? Like basically, you just basically wouldn't begin a job or you could lose your job for sure. That's a high commitment to your community and to your culture. Um, yeah. And so I think that I'm always curious when I see individuals with those, but also know like immediately that they have some kind of like deep commitment to their community and their culture. And I'm always very excited to talk with them about, like, hey, what's going on with your tattoo? And it helps me because I'm like, oh yeah, I got tattoos too. Like, so it doesn't come across weird. But yeah, I think the permanentness of so visually marking yourself, of your people is really interesting.
Thanks so much for that. And one thing, I have two questions. The first is, do you have any symbols that you could show us, or some favorite symbols? Or some things that are really open access, that you would recommend if you wanted to get started thinking about this? Not tattooing, but just generally a better understanding.
Um, I guess the ones I can probably talk about a little bit more now is probably the ones people are most familiar, like the diamond. I don't know how it's described in Louisiana. I feel like it's really interesting for me every time I go to Louisiana and hang out with all my native homies, because I feel like it's almost like a different country. Because I'm sure everyone knows like, when people talk about Choctaws outside the state, it's usually not including Louisiana, which is always very interesting to me. But so I know that I'm ignorant and always learning. But at least for Mississippi Band and Choctaw Nation, I feel like diamonds are all over everything. And I feel like the general narrative of those is often just talking about how, like the women used to be able to work in the fields. We had like that was our domain. Like we got to decide and do diplomacy about like who got to eat, who didn't get to eat, um, all these kinds of stuff. But the snakes were in the fields and they helped to eat the rodents and also the insects that would otherwise harm the crops, the corn and all that. And thinking about that, that is kind of a big thing, because that was our food, like we couldn't just go to Walmart and pick up something if we ran out of food. Like if it got decimated like that, we were screwed for the year. So, but that's usually the narrative that they talk about the snake. But the part that they don't talk about with the diamonds is that's also a head nod to our older cosmology with the not just the diamondback rattlesnake, but also with Sinti Holo or Sinti Lupita, the horned serpent, the feathered serpent, and its role spiritually with us. So that's one I like to talk about just because I think that people don't often know about that. I think a lot of people don't generally know about our older supernatural beings that we would have around, or like, like our deities and things like that. Like I'm sure most people don't know about Old Woman Who Never Dies, for example, or Red Horn. So I like to like bring that one up because most people are like, oh, diamonds, Choctaw, of course. There's one I'm actually working on. I think this one's kind of cool. I don't know if it'll show up in my thing. Maybe, maybe not. Can you see it? So
Yeah.
this one's kind of cool. This one's an older one that comes from the mound building era. And it's actually like I don't know how often people are looking at moths. But the hawk moth in particular was important throughout the mound building. Yeah, like I think like north to south, whether it was in Louisiana all the way up through, Cahokia, see like the hawk moth and stuff. And I'm sure there's a lot more meanings that I'm like, I don't know yet. Some of that I think comes through like talking with people that have more knowledge than me, like my friend Dustin Mader or some elders, or just eventually I'll learn more. But I think this one's kind of cool because like we have lots of spirals, and I think that they can mean like a lot of different things, depending on your context, depending on like the context that it's with, but also your personal context, right? Like there's things that I read differently because like of the ceremonies I go to, for example, and how I experience those. And like my friends that look at the same thing and they see something different. But this one's cool because like you do that little like swirl thing and then you put the little half diamonds on there. And then that's representative of the hawk moth's like tongue that comes out. And then like those are really cool too, because again, like we were agriculturalists, but also like the hawk moth is a pollinator as well. So that helps like with life and stuff like that. So I think those ones are pretty cool. But yeah, I like all the swirls. I think those are rad. But like I said, those are interpretive, I guess, at this point. They could be clouds, they can be wind, they could be water, they could be energy, they could be portals. It just, more things than that. So
And thank you, Britt. Thank you so much for your time. I'm also wondering if there's any questions in the crowd or people who want to have a particular question. Yeah.
Could you repeat the name?
Sun Signs, what was the name of the first book that you recommended?
oh, sun circles and human hands. And feel free to ask me for clarification too, because I know I was like all over the board.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a question. It could also be a comment or a thought or just.
And I guess I'll also say like things that me and Hallie talked about too prior to this that I think is really interesting is like I'm Black Native, obviously, and I will say that like the only place that I've so far felt like super at home with like immediately was visiting New Orleans and Louisiana. And I think there's a lot of like histories, good and bad, between Choctaw people and Southeastern tribes and um our African American relatives. Like for example, a lot of people don't know that Swing Low, Sweet Chariot was actually written by a freedman in the fields of like Durant in like Indian territory. Which is like cool, but also like not cool history that was someone enslaved by the Choctaws. But there is certain things that like I think that it's a lot clearer the connection between like Choctaw folks and like our relatives from Africa. That's like easier to see than Louisiana, which I also really appreciate with the like the food and everything else. But like one of the, like the things I also love too, which I was like, man, y'all could really like do it up with the food because also I'm a chef. So like if I was there, I'd cook up some stuff. But I mean like obviously like everyone knows about gumbo, but like our word for okra in Choctaw is literally kumbo because of okra being called kumbo over in Africa. Like we took that word and that's what our you know Choctaw Numpa word for okra is. Um and yeah, there's some really cool history there with the food too, outside of like Louisiana, like with the hickory nuts as well. Um I think one of the things with like I talked a little bit before about, you know, it's cool to preserve things, but there's a bit of like we need to move past just preserving things and figuring out how to bring life into it. And with the discussion around, you know, some designs may not be safe because of the spirit that is, you know, attached to that, and being very careful is like there's no reason why we can't create new, right? Like our ancestors have always come into things, they're like us, right? Like I feel like myself and I feel like a lot of other friends in my community, like we hold our ancestors up on this like pedestal, right? Of like untouchability. But they were just like us. They were just human, right? Like they laughed, they played jokes on each other, like they had depression, they struggled with stuff. And just like how we have to do sometimes today, like we run into issues where we have to decide as a community, like, okay, like how are we gonna handle this? Or like maybe someone does something really cool and they're like, that's cool, I'm gonna do that too, let me try that out. And then it just becomes like a trend, and then you know then that becomes cultural, and then that becomes traditional. And so in that same way, there's no reason why we can't, if there's things that we no longer have or we want to create something new, that we can't come together and be like, okay, like let's figure out like how do we come together and solve this, right? So maybe for some communities, using those symbols may not be the jam. But there's no reason why you can't go out on the land, right? And then like I know my teachings with traditional foods is like, you know, pick one food and then spend a year really getting to know it, like not just how to cook it and how to prepare it, but like go understand where it grows, right? Like where does it grow beside? Like what do you need to look for when it comes up? Like what do you gather from that? When do you gather from that? How does that help you with your body and like all these kinds of things, right? So going out onto the land and really understanding it can also help to spark inspiration for new designs as well. So I think there's a lot of different ways to approach being able to bring new things in that can become that traditional thing for generations and it's like down the line. So yeah.
Yeah, contemporary, we're able to be contemporary and indigenous. Well, Britt, thank you so much for your time. And we really appreciate having you here. So thank you so much.
Awesome, Yakuke, appreciate y'all, and hopefully that made sense.
I want to segue too before I introduce Kim and tell you guys a little bit about the Indigenous Gulf Stream, because it's really about being contemporary and Indigenous at the same time. The Indigenous Gulf Stream, so my name is Haley Dardar. I'm part of Bvlbancha Public Access along with Ida Erickson in the back and John Parit. And so one of the projects that we've been working on since 2020 is called the Indigenous Gulf Stream. Every 2 years, we do a media biennial of Indigenous artists where we asked Indigenous artists and thinkers to submit their work. Everyone is paid, it's a commission-based project. And then we have a 24-hour media stream of Indigenous voices from the Gulf South. The way that we define Indigenous voices is that either you're Indigenous and from here, or you're Indigenous from here and living somewhere else, or you're Indigenous to some part of Turtle Island and have some relationship and live in the Gulf South. So for example, if you're Lakota living in New Orleans, we would ask for submission for the Gulf Stream. If you're Tunica living in Boston, would love to have you on the Gulf Stream. So just generally, that's kind of how we think about who's Indigenous and what we mean by that. It's really the relationship with Indigenous people in place. We've just got funded to do our 2025 Gulf Stream. It's going to be in November. So yeah, we're very excited about it. But I wanted to let you guys know that in case you know any artists, we're having an open call for artists and thinkers right now. So we're trying to gather and collect the content to go on the stream. Again, everyone who submits content, if their content is paid, it's a commission-based project, you do get paid for it. But we're looking for artists and voices within that. We're looking for people who are interested in interviewing other people within their community to try to get, you know, thoughts and ideas and philosophies into that stream also. So if you have projects or if you do some sort of media work, I know that's, you know, we featured Joe last time in our trailer for the 2023 Gulf Stream. But it's the point of it is to catalyze Indigenous art in the Gulf South. So there's a brochure for the project on your desk underneath there, but please, we're asking more people to join. We're also looking for host places. So the stream is going to be 24 hours and it's going to be on Twitch. So you just kind of tune in and broadcast. It's completely free. We're looking for different places that want to host the stream, that, you know, we'll have it playing and then people can just come in and out whenever they want, and see pieces of the stream too. So Ida and I will be here today if you want to talk about it. There's also some places there, but that's our commercial and we would really love you guys to submit things. With that, and also that goes to you, Britt. Thank you so much for having this and thanks so much for this conversation. And I'll give it to Kim next to introduce our next guest. Oh, Britt, question, Britt, do you want to stay on or you want to go on mute? You want to stay off or you headed out? I'm just trying to make sure I'm doing the right thing digitally.
Yeah, I mean, I can turn the video off and just kind of hang out and listen and watch.
That's cool. All right. Okay, let me work on it.
Sweet.
I think we have Ida set up, so we're not changing the pedestal anymore. I know, you're free. Okay.
But also if y'all need me to like go off so y'all have your technology and it's not complicated, that's fine too.
Oh, no, we got it.
Okay.
We got it.
I have to hold all this and read.
Oh, we're okay.
All right, next we're gonna have.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, okay, it should be okay.
Before we go into our storytelling. Next, we are going to have Mapo Kanor, a Cleveland, Ohio native who is a ceramic artist and educator whose work is rooted in improvisation, exploring space and form, both symbolically and literally. She began ceramics training at the Quaker Run School on Magnolia, where she first developed her passion for clay, and later apprenticed with the production potters before earning her BFA from Massachusetts College of Art in and her MFA from Ohio State. Since arriving in New Orleans, Mapo has served as department head and associate professor of art at Xavier, while teaching workshops in Japan, Haystack Mountain School of Crafts in Maine, and the Penland School of Craft in North Carolina. Her studio practice pushes the potential of clay as well as her own imagination, testing the limits of clay's malleability and strength with her large-scale sculptures. By incorporating assemblage, collage, and malleability and strength, incorporating assemblage, collage, light drawing, and painting into her practice, she challenges the very definition of ceramic art. And she is going to teach us about Adinkra symbols, something that she knows a great deal about. So thank you, Mapo, for being with us. I don't know how you're going to do all this.
I have no idea.
So you just hold it?
Put it on the table if you like.
Oh, okay.
Put one on the table,
If you wouldn't mind putting this on your scarf, is that okay?
wherever you want to put me. Yeah.
Is that okay?
Is that good?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation to come. Um, Dr. Buzz, I'm at Xavier. Um, and it's nice to be here at Dillard. I know Dr. Buzz from Xavier. And to be honest, as the head of the art department at Xavier, we have a great relationship with the department here at Dillard. So John Barnes and all the hard work here. In fact, I taught classes here for a little minute. So, there's no rivalry in my heart at all. Before I get started, and this is something I haven't done. I wrote a proposal and I want to share it with you. As an artist, I see everybody as artists to a certain extent. We all have an art and we all make things, whether it's a soup or, what you put on in the morning, or we all have altars in our room. So as a part of this healing process, I wrote a proposal and it goes like this. Join the family of what you do. We belong to many families as doers, as caregivers, gardeners, financial advisors, builders, maintenance workers, teachers, dreamers, artists, life partners. As each we make a pledge of service to ourselves and to the world, but not to each other. We belong to the world as a family member with the purpose that every action that we make is a glorious and cathartic dance in celebration of our membership. What we do, what we think, is given the purpose of understanding and loving, bearing pride. We resurrect the humility of lifting up the world as a family of God. We see ourselves connected without priority or preference. Our Bible is caring. Our actions rise from joy and compassion. There is enough goodwill for everyone, and everyone is different, but not foreign. Our pledges are the blueprint of a shared identity. What we do, what we dream, who we are the pledges that consider the outcomes of our doing. We know sacrifice and privilege, convenience, and long-held beliefs are going to be required. We know, we consider all living beings. Sorry, a little nervous. We consider all living beings a part of this future of doers. There is no need for soldiers or reasons for war. We build for each other a world that gives the comfort of acceptance. We cheer the challenges of rising to our pledges. We live fearlessly. We abandon harming as a false sense of safety or justice. We know that we will all die. We live in the bonds of a shared, sincere commitment to serve in love in the family of doers around the world. Thank you. So the hope is through what we do, we create a family. We create the family around the world that has no priorities, that there is no hierarchies. And as a clay person, those folks from the dirt, we have this non-hierarchical artwork where I share it with the native people of every continent. There are people who dig in the earth and make things for us to share and to use. And as a part of that journey, it took me to Ghana, where I made a work and somebody said, hey, that reminds me of some stuff I saw in this place. And I'm like, well, I gotta go and check that out. So I got a chance to go to Ghana. And where I went to was actually far north. But the Adinkra tradition actually is from Ivory Coast and Ghana, which were somewhat, before they were established countries, the people were connected. So the Ghanaian people, or the Bono people, actually started this process, started the tradition of Adinkra. And it was originally these symbols that were created primarily for the kings. And over time, it was been adopted by the Ashanti people, who actually later on conquered or sort of took over the cultural, political power of that area. So to this day, when you go to Ghana, you will see people using the Adinkra symbols that are not the Bono people, but the Ashanti people, and actually now all over Ghana, people have used it. I appreciate Britt's comment about making things new. These symbols are a combination of a number of different iconography, and some from, if you've seen the concentric circles that are a symbol of leadership, which means that you are the center of the power, but you are also a target. And in some cases, you've seen the symbol that's akoma, which is the symbol of the heart, and how important that the heart, they say sometimes the heart is in the stomach, because that is where you get your power, where your energy, and those two things of your energy and your power should be connected to the love that you send out. One of the most prevalent Ghanaian Adinkra symbol is one that I'm wearing right now, Jinami, which means fear only God. And you have nothing to fear but God. And that's probably one of the most powerful, or the ones that you'll see used quite often. So traditionally, these symbols were put on clothing that you wore. And then now it's being used for a number of different reasons. There are over 90 Adinkra symbols. So I couldn't tell you the names of every single one, but I'm sure you've been able to have a chance to see a lot of these symbols. And I have some examples that I can share and pass around for you to see them. One of the things that Dr. Vaz has asked me, or what was proposed, that we actually have an activity where we're making some of these Ghanaian symbols. And so if you haven't had a chance yet, I'm going to send out some, I'll give you some examples, some more examples of them. One of the, number one of the symbols that we use, another one that's very popular, is the Sankofa. And so if you've seen the Sankofa with a bird looking back, you've got to know where you've been before you can know where you're going. And so this acknowledgement of the past, but we are moving ahead. We are moving forward. And so it's important, the development of other Adinkra symbols, because it's not dead. They're still getting invented. They're still being added, which is what I love. Another question that I often have is that because they were not traditionally from the Ashanti people, but the Ashanti people adopted it and embraced it. And so as an artist, I'm always questioning this idea of cultural superiority or cultural gatekeeping. It is something for us to share, because as a people, we are now not just one culture. Most of us, if you look in our DNA, we've got a whole lot of stuff in us. And inside of that, these ideas of symbols of what our strengths are a part of these Adinkra symbols. One symbol that I really enjoy is the double-headed crocodile. And again, like natives, we're looking to animals to see a connection in terms of survival. Crocodiles are revered because they are in the water and on the land. They could be underwater waiting for you. And that's a really good and that's a really good feeding method, because they're not necessarily the quickest when it comes to trying to get an antelope, but if it's in the water. So they're looking at nature and they're seeing the power of nature and using that as a jumping point to create these images. Another important one is that you have an alligator, or well, should I say, we have alligators, safe crocodiles, that share a a stomach. So you would often see, in some cases, two heads in one stomach. So that means if you eat, you're nourishing me. You know, there's no need to fight over what goes in your mouth, right? Because if it comes to you, it is going to nourish me. There is another Adinkra symbol that I enjoy quite a bit too, is the celebration of joined hearts. And so oftentimes you'll see a lot of the Adinkra symbols that revere the idea of working together and to doing things together and to understand things. A lot of the symbols are appreciated they're often linked with sayings. So that if you are looking at a Adinkra symbol, it's a symbol of something, but again, all of the things that I've been saying, like shared sense of responsibility, feeding, helping each other, becomes a part of that. So I'm actually going to challenge you all to, again, look at your cultural heritage and create your symbols based on some of the symbols that we think about in terms of the Adinkra symbols and some of those ideas. So the idea of a heart, a spiral, symbols of the circle are all intrinsic of that way of creating symbols. My inclination is to start drawing. So
They can draw it.
okay. And so the question is, where do you begin?
Yes, all right. We'll get you some pins.
Okay.
Can I?
Yes.
Are there translations?
Yes, there are translations for a lot of those. Okay. So like Jinami, Fear Only God, there is a listing. I happen to have one for you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have several of these. And so you can see they can be quite lengthy in some of the things that they're talking about. There's another one that I actually had on my wedding invitation, was the sun and the moon. And so that those two are complementary energies, right? So again, this idea of the masculine and the feminine that work together. There are some that are the wisdom knot, right? So that you have to be pretty smart to take apart a knot. Let's see. One of my favorites actually is Odewe Fakwan, which actually the translation is "Love never loses its way home." So love always is going to come back home. So so be free with your love. Let's see. There's also symbols that are revered in Ghana, like the drum. And Duaninimin, which is the ram's horn, where you have an animal, and again, this idea of observing a animal. Rams are interesting because they're easily led, unlike goats, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, they are powerful animals. And before, if you've seen animals, if you've seen rams butt their heads, the first thing they do is that they have to back up, right? And so before you expend your energy, right, back it up. Okay. And so all of these symbols, you know, there are so many, there's one that's the spider that's revolves around the spider's web, and that element of creativity, right? So looking to nature, the fragility of butterflies and their sincerity. So a lot of times these animals have characteristics that get adopted. In some cases, you'll have hairstyles, right? That were the hairstyles of an important person because that person represented faithfulness and that was an assistant to the king. That particular hairstyle gets adopted as faithfulness and reliability. So, yes.
Coming off of brick stuff, I'm wondering, you have these two triangles like Ava and Vanessa. Am I saying that right?
the triangle or well, actually, the diamond shape, right? The diamond shape comes in a number of different ways because there's four of them that looks like a gate, right? And so it talks about home. So when you look at those triangles, they can mean a number of different things. There are some that are newer than others that I am more familiar with. And there are some that deal with one of my favorites is Aya, which means I am not afraid of you. And it's actually a symbol. If you look at the symbol, it's a fern. And the idea that a fern will grow up between a crack, right? Give me a little bit of space and I'm going to grow, right? So while you may think this fern doesn't have very much power, it's like, okay, go ahead, pull me up, but I'm going to go right back. So there is a lot of really beautiful elements of Adinkra symbols. And again, there's literally almost 100 of them. But in creating your own, you may want to think about combining, like the same way you have two stomachs or you're combining symbols, that what makes sense. You know, there are some that talk about the teeth and the tongue, that they work together, right? That you can't communicate without having those two things, and one is real soft, the other one isn't. So again, thinking about symbols and shapes, right? I can draw on them.
Yeah.
Is there a marker? So as an artist, I like to break things down. And there's one that's, let's see, Name Dua, which as a ceramic artist, I use Adinkra symbols oftentimes in artwork. I made a series of urns for folks who passed, and they choose which Adinkra symbol is relevant for that person. But one that I use quite often is I can use what? Oh, you can put it on there. Okay, good. You got a marker? I'm sorry, we didn't prep for this. Or at least I didn't do it as much.
And it was my responsibility, so I'm sorry.
And that's the thing, I have pencils. Well, I have a pencil. I have another one that you can borrow. I don't go anywhere without having something to.
Project, y'all, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's quite all right.
Do you have a pencil or do you need?
Oh,
Anybody has a pencil? You want to look at this?
okay. Let me borrow my pencil for just a quick. Oh, you just loaded it. Okay. Can I borrow your pencil for just a
Yes,
second?
yes, your pencil.
Okay. So to simplify one that may seem a little complicated is that oftentimes I'll just start off with can you see this? Can you see this? I need somebody. Oh, if I have this on, do I need one or the other? But if you can imagine, I'm making a cross. And then in that cross, you may have a heart. And so there ends up being four of them. And in between that heart is another cross. So this is the symbol of Name Dua. So to have four of them is a place of home, is a place of a sacred space, right?
I see one that I used for our mother's 80th birthday.
Which one did you use?
Let me see. Pronounce it. Help me. Pim. I can't see him. I don't have my glasses up there.
Pimpomsey.
Oh, is that the one?
Pimpomsey.
Mhm.
Pimpomsey.
Um,
Pimpomsey.
Oh, yeah, the readiness. Yes, okay, yeah. Somebody who's right there.
A great
I
leader.
brought one.
Oh, yeah,
This
and
is
there's also
the most important one to all of us.
the
But we
cone.
need to do our little deal.
But when they're making the Adinkra symbols, and oftentimes when they're making the clothing,
Yeah.
they also use a comb to make the lines in between the symbols,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, and there is an Adinkra symbol that resembles a
That's why I brought it.
comb that talks about this idea of beauty. And a comb is a symbol of taking care of yourself.
Right.
You know, it's like self-care. So, instead of doing a whole lot of talking, I'm gonna invite you all to just take a few minutes. I have more of these Adinkra symbols and I can, if you wanna pass those back. And this actually, there are so many. So one of the things about Ghana that was really wonderful for me was knowing that there are ceramic artists that are there who also could teach me new ways of doing ceramics. And so, yeah, if you have some time, you can actually look up Adinkra symbols. And Adinkra is actually named after the Bono king who invented it. And so they kept, even when the Ashanti adopted it, they kept the term Adinkra. One of the other cool things about Ghana in terms of tradition is a relatively newer tradition that you will find in Teshi with the Ga people, which is also in Accra, are coffins.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so if you're familiar with the coffins, that could be anything from a car to a pair of shoes to
Chili.
to a chili pepper, you are buried in the object that is a symbol of your life. And this was invented by Kanikwe in the 1950s. So this is actually a relatively new tradition. So Ghana is known for its innovation. And if you can think about, and that was the other thing that was interesting that Britt had actually said about, it's not, we have ancestral things and there are things that are old, but we can create new traditions. And as a result of this tradition by Connie Quaid, you have a whole slew of these coffin makers in Teshi who make these incredible coffins. And oftentimes they're asked to make things that they've never made before. And so I got a chance to go and check them out. And they're like, it's such an artist's privilege to get a challenge that you want to make something. And it's like, well, how do we make this airplane? Or how do we make a cowrie shell? Or how do we make this? And how do we fit the person in it? Because remember, this is a coffin, somebody has to be in it. So this design idea is incredible. So art is a living, breathing, ever evolving aspect of our lives. And at any time, we can create traditions that will live on beyond us and adopt, right? Not necessarily take it over, but add on to it. And as I'm sure as a member of the Black Indian tribes here in New Orleans and the baby dolls, we need this continuum to keep going. And it's always a pleasure to see the evolution of people's creativity. It's not something dead, right? It's something that is constantly living and evolving. Thank you. Okay. I want my phone. No, take it. Yeah, I'm good.
We have our storytelling. One part of Big Chief of the Golden Comanche Mardi-Gras Indian tribe, a celebrated culture bearer of New Orleans with over 20 years of experience in music, intricate meaning, and artistic expression. A published author, cultural consultant, accomplished musician, Chief Juan blends traditional Mardi Gras Indian tribal rhythms with fun styles of the Meters, the Neville Brothers, producing music that resonates deeply within his community and beyond. He's performed and recorded with renowned bands such as Galactic,
The 101 Runners and Rhythm Conspiracy, and its great stages with icons like Patti LaBelle, Cyril Neville, Uncle Shorty, and Dr. John. Traveling the world with the Golden Comanches, Chief Juan shares its vibrant sounds and traditions of New Orleans, ensuring their cultural preservation. His work has extended to Hollywood film and a landmark performance just in 2024 with the Louisiana Philharmonic Orchestra, premiering a piece by Maxim Sumarov that celebrates the unique legacy of Money Record.
Is I need your fax if that's okay? I'm gonna put it on your, is that okay? That work for you?
All right.
Is that too much in your face?
Nah, we good. We good.
Okay.
I think we'll survive it.
Don't quit yourself.
Uh-oh. I think that was the pop filter. Yeah. There we go. All right, we good. Yeah, you good. Well, good evening, all. I am Big Chief Juan Pardo, as she said before, and I guess we're entering the storytelling. It's funny that we're talking about Choctaw tribes because that correlates with the story that I have to tell. Anytime you speak to someone about the Mardi Gras Indian culture, you can go to YouTube right now and draw a million documentaries. The basis to what that explanation would be is that it is a celebration of the natives of this area, or Native Americans, coming together with the enslaved from the diaspora. As they would escape, they would give them refuge in the tribes, and eventually they become one. That's kind of the balloon version of what you would see. So in that, I had the idea of, if we are celebrating this unity and we're speaking about that in the culture, if you are active in the culture today, presently, you begin to look for that beyond just the beaded stories. And if you begin to look for that, it becomes harder to find. And so as I begin to question the visualization of that exact story, like where do I see that story now? So the suit that I created for this past Mardi Gras was called Birth of a Culture, because the pivotal moment that I would say this culture came is when the first indigenous met the first escaped slave. If we ever stop for a moment and say, when was that moment? That would be it. And so in that moment, we'll begin the sharing of cultures. And so I envision, how do I tell that story through my suit? And at Jazz Fest, there's often the tribes that come in the native areas. And so there's a lady by the name of Becky Thomas Maziri, and she is from the Clifton Choctaw tribe in North Louisiana, right outside the Kisatchie Forest. And her and I began to talk, and I told her about the concept that we are on the heritage stage performing as Mardi Gras Indians. They are over in the native village at Jazz Fest. We're celebrating a kinship, but yet we are apart. How do I get everybody in New Orleans to begin to focus on this? So one thing is for sure, my suit gonna be big enough for you to see it. So I started there. And so what I did is I looked at the style and the art that she created. And what they do is you have to be a Native American to get a permit to go to Kisatchie Forest to pull the young off of a sapling, the pine straw. And they weave these pine straw baskets. And the only way you can get one of these is you literally have to be Native, or you have to work and come together with one. So that is exactly what we did. I began my suit design, and I explained to her the story, how I wanted to tell. And not only did I want to create the suit to tell the story, I wanted it to be a living art between the two of us, her and I working together, revitalizing and shining a new light on the story that we tell every Mardi Gras of us coming together. So I wanted to bring that togetherness forward again, reach out to the tribes around Louisiana and bring that in. I started reaching out to a lot of tribes, but when I had the idea, I'm one of these people that I'll start sewing a suit and put it down because inspiration hit me and start sewing a different suit. It's crazy, but it's what I do. So that being said, to give you guys some vision to the story, this basket, yes, this basket was made from that pine straw. And and so obviously it's rare to even consider owning one of these, let alone having one on my Indian suit. So what I also did is, as you see this one, these are what we like to call our wings or cuffs on this Indian suit. You see here, she has one also. And so one of the things that we have is we're always kind of bringing colorism into everything here in our new modern America, no matter what. So I wanted to point that out in the suit as well. There we go. So when you see it, all right. Yes. And so these baskets were obviously used for carrying and bringing goods to and fro. And just as she spoke earlier about when she was saying how in the Choctaw tribe, the women were made decisions and talked about who ate and who did different things. And so having that same dialogue with Becky from the Clifton Choctaw tribe, I wanted to go with these baskets. So we literally sat and she scaled down this basket to fit on this suit. And it's just a testimony to what can happen when people come together. And it just hopefully creates moments like this to create the dialogue and the conversation of here we are, as even in this room now, what this is representing. We represent this every Mardi Gras. Everything that this event is coming together around is represented. But how do we make it look like this room? And so that's something that I wanted to, hopefully help shine a light on with this particular suit. And the classical piece that I created with LPO also tells that exact story through classical music and artistic dance visualization. So the whole concept from the music piece to this suit goes back to the one title, which is Birth of a Culture. So that is my version of telling our story in a artistic way and being inclusive to the cultures as we tell the story. If we tell it that way, let's live it. So let's not say this is what they did. It should be this is what we are doing. There's no reason to not continue this togetherness that obviously got us to this point where we are today. So I definitely, want to continue that journey and continue to create paths that create this kind of coming together. So I thought, stay up for Q&A or we switching? Yes. I've been masking 20 years. Yes. This literally, like we say in the culture, it took a year. This a year worth of sewing. Yeah. No, this was the suit that I wore for last Mardi Gras. As soon as I run out of here, I'm gonna be sitting down to a new one. But this is the suit from last year. Mhm. Um, it was a little work on the classical end, because a lot of times where Mardi Gras Indian music has room for like a lot of improv, classical musicians are very structured. If it's not on the black and white, then it's a little hard for them to figure some things out. But I kind of worked in the process with the Maximum, who teaches at Tulane, and I had this concept in my head for at least, I'm a big believer in manifestation, no matter how long it takes. Um, Probably 10 years. I had been creating this piece. Like I've lived that LPO piece for 10 years. The opening credits to the end of it. I lived it for 10 years, like daily, writing it. So I want to say, in fairness, it was easy because I had lived that moment so many times. I had been in a room with Maxim. I didn't know what he looked like. I didn't know his name 10 years ago, but I was in the room mentally working with him and going through this. So I was just ready for it. So it was easy for me, but I could see where, where the complication could come in.
Like, we have some different time frames presented here. Like we have Mardi Gras
Mhm.
last break. And then we have a tattoo that's on you permanent
Uh-huh.
pottery that is somewhere in between that, depending on how it's prepared, but also
Right.
takes like a process to make. I don't know, I don't, that's an incomplete thought, but just like the idea of, does the fact that you can make a new suit every year change what you try to make a suit?
No, well, here's the thing. Even with a tattoo, from the modern standpoint, you're constantly adding. And so creating a new suit could be a correlation of adding to a tattoo, right? So what I'm doing is adding to my story each year. A good example of understanding the creation and the path of a suit is that when people see us, they obviously the suit is flamboyant, so that's the standout. But what you're looking at is 1 year of a life. And a lot of time that part in the grandeur of it all is overlooked. Case in point, the Studio in the Woods, that program, okay, this was sewn out there. That's where this was made. This was made partially in France and the other part here at home. So when you see it, without the conversation, you don't know that. But this is sewing in airports, hotels, Airbnbs. So you also have life experience. You may have a relative pass, and you know exactly what you were sewing on when that came. So when I say it's a year of a person's life, when you hear that "Kua," and it comes from, depending on how that suit was created, sometimes that yell is coming from a different place. Sometimes it's not just going through the motions, it's a jubilance of completion of that suit because of what it took to get there. Mhm. Um, it was just within her tribe from Clifton Choctaw and my tribe Golden Comanche, nothing outside of that. No, the music was just myself with LPO.
I'm pretty sure it's probably been to the New Orleans Museum, and on the third floor, they have a beaded suit, they're durable.
Yes, I got pictures of it in my phone.
I keep thinking that it's ancestral memory that got triggered by Native Americans for Black folks to start making their suits. How do you feel about it?
To be honest, I like to say there's no wrong version because I never like to argue history as if I have a time machine, right? Because there is a part of truth in all of these stories. It's a collective. That beating process goes across because here's where the argument comes in, but here's where we can stop it. If we remove the communication, the idea of people not communicating or being here with each other prior to this new history that we seems to be able to just throw it away now. As of most recent, it had to be so fake to where, oh no, we don't even need it. We're not teaching that anymore. We're going to throw that out. So how fake was it then? If we can just abandon it that easy, right? So what I would say is you look at, this is the way I viewed our history from Mardi Gras Indian to many cultures. We had to be coming together. If you travel, many people in here have been to Africa. I just got back from Cuba. I've been to Africa. I've been to India. There is a kinship that exists among a cultural people that we were interconnected. Somebody got wise and wanted to control everything, so they figured out this division thing, but we were all kind of doing the same thing, and it was passing. The Great Flood happened in every culture. And I went on this whole thing of studying Buddhism, and I went down the rabbit hole for a few years, and it all exists in its own way. And we all telling the same story. So like I said, some of these is more created divisions than actual separation. You know, that's kind of, again, not arguing. That's my version. Mhm. Yes. Well, if the code is in your DNA, it triggers. It's like scraping a hard drive. We are yet to figure these computers out. I'm enjoying mine because exploring new cultures and figuring it out. There are things in the DNA that, you know, I just recently said the first time I'm gonna say this out loud. I want all of the hidden research to melanin. I've been to some countries, and let's just say I went to Reunion Island. In the Creole culture on Reunion Island, once you get way back in the woods where I was with no phone, there is something in here, and I want to know what that is. Beyond what we're talking about, you know, on the surface here in America. I've seen some things. Let's just say that. I want to know how this works because we have yet to discover how this works, but I have seen it. I met someone that is beyond hundreds of years old that almost looked like he was in my condition. And you're not allowed to bring a phone to see him and speak with him, and he only gonna speak with certain people. Somebody explained my story to him, and I was allowed. It's the best I can tell you. It's some stuff out here. I want all of the research to melanin. I want it. I've never been into science like that, but after that trip, just seeing some things, and you know, I've been to Cuba a few times, but every time I go, just there's a magic there, and I want to know. I want to know how to tap into it. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Oh, you had a question? Mhm.
That's one of the places in Cuba. And I had a chance to dance with one of the groups there. They told me about audience. You know how that goes.
Yeah. Same thing. I literally could show it to you on my phone right now.
Look at some of the side streets. It reminds you of the streets in Bourbon Street.
Oh, well, it looks exactly like New Orleans. Yeah. But the thing about it, and I don't want to go off the path of what we on here, but just a quick window into what you're saying. there's a version of Cuba that me as an American growing up here, living in New Orleans, that I had in my mind. That is not it. I might as well have been walking around in Africa, but that is not the version of Cuba that we are sold here. You know, when you get there, I think Jazz Fest tried to give us that message that year that they brought Cuba to New Orleans. I think they were trying to make the connection, but I was walking around there like I might as well have been in New Orleans, like for real, for real. And I with the name like mine and my cultural heritage, my grandfather was Cuban, my grandmother's Haitian. So I'm just a New Orleans gumbo through and through. But but they the minute you mentioned it, it turns into New Orleans. Oh, you home? Come here, come there. I'm at this point, I'm being passed around through the neighborhood like, hey, this is his first time. Come. You know, it's meals, and for people that, you know, God, our tariffs are horrible on the other side of the world. Let's just say that. To go and experience from nothing but something, because the amount of love that's put on top of it, it's different, you know, like irregardless to the modernization of here, I see why people pack up and call it quits. I could literally do it. I could right now go get back on a plane and tap out. You know, I'm being absolutely, like, you know, I got kids and they're in school, but from a individual spiritual standpoint, take the connections away, I could go to the house and call it a day and never come back here. And I understand why people do it now. Yeah.
What's your name?
Juan Pardo.
Big Chief.
Big Chief Juan Pardo. Yep. Or how they've been saying it all week, Juan Carlos Pardo. It was beautiful to hear your name called properly. Juan. I was like, yes. It was wonderful to be, you know, to hear it said the way your grandfather said it. You know, that was cool. But, you know,
Like we're saying about remembering as part of the suit that like clicked in my mind is Bvlbancha Public Access for our first stream in 2021. So what we did was we have people interview thought leaders, and then we have artists listen to those thought leader interviews and react. And one of the artists, she was Angela Como, she was a leader, and her reaction was just to film her making a pair of earrings along with what that person was talking about.
Mhm.
Real time, 2 hours. But it made me realize, like, I didn't, it's more of a question, but like the idea that eating is a landscape. And it's like a landscape that you're putting your memories on. And like thinking about from an Indigenous standpoint, how when you're not able to access your land, and that's the place that has your memories,
Mhm.
it's like seeing a suit. And then it's the same way, but if you lose your land, you can also build a suit.
Right.
Place of the landscape.
Well, it's one of the things. It also is just like quilting, which is a very which again, when I was in Reunion Island, they rolled out a quilt. Like, imagine quilting from Reunion Island that has not been disturbed. When they roll this thing out, it is just history for days. Like, I mean, beyond comprehension. So yeah. Yeah, exactly. So what you're saying, you know, in beading being a roadmap, I would equate that to the African quilting and then that whole process, you know, and and then even the culture of the Maloya, which is, you know, indigenous to that island, and just really how Creole it is. I'll give you a prime example of that, and I know we got to get to somebody else, but Militon hit Rouse's like that, right? I've been dealing with Militon all my life, but never thought about it. You know, it's just like, that's something, you know, my grandma and them make, my mama make it. It is what it is. Get to Reunion Island. There's militant everywhere, growing up the side of the mountains, just like wild. They call it shushu. They're cooking militant. And then I go to the restaurant. These dishes like somebody cooking at my house. I'm like, what's going on? I call home, like, you ain't gonna believe this. you know, you're not gonna believe this. Like, this really, I'm going to check to make sure ain't none of my ATs, nobody in my family in that kitchen. And I mean, like, without exaggeration, that's how it is. So what it made me question, and I'm working on a project right now called Flamboyant, and it's a connection between the creolities of 3 different continents: Puerto Rican Creole in New Orleans, and Creole on Reunion Island. And I'm wondering where that whole New Orleans has a history with Reunion Island that we don't even speak about here. And to have spent almost a month or so on that island and being there with the indigenous people of that land, there's just so much untapped information that we have yet to. It is just off the coast of Africa. It's right by Madagascar. Yeah, which is a whole nother thing. Like I said, that, to see, that's like freezing time in Madagascar. That's just like, yeah.
I'm gonna give a comment. Mirliton in French means kazoo, play.
Play it, okay.
They came from South pre-Columbian world of South America called Chayote.
Right.
It went to Haiti because they shipped everybody off from here, got them to Haiti. You had a French Revolution, then you had a Haitian Revolution. They did not want those people to come to Louisiana after the revolution. So they had to go to Cuba. And so at the north of Cuba, on the west, there are people that are these Haitian Cuban people that became you.
Yep.
And in Reunion, Seychelles, and Mauritius.
Yep,
their
Mauritius.
is same as ours. It's a Portuguese pidgin, relexified to French in an African syntax is what we have for our Kudi in Creole here.
Right.
So the Portuguese pidgin root is a language called Niam. We get the word yam from that. So shushu is what we call it here. Shushu, Mirliton, Mediton. So the idea of those foods and words and things that are not only important to us or that get, but they have a root and a reason how they travel, like sugar.
Yeah.
So what we share in the diaspora of Creoles around the world is this similarity of Portuguese bringing people here and there, Portuguese going to Hawaii, who were the cavaquinho, the ukuleles, the Hawaiians didn't have guitar, but these people brought this instrument, and they changed it to what they call the flying or dancing flea. Ukulele is that language, but it wasn't forced. They liked the melodies,
right,
and they used them, and they have a Creole influence. So this whole separation stuff, so I'm going to give you a Ishakatakapa word we have. Hoktiwe. Hoktiwe means we are together, and that's we leave it at that.
That's
I was like,
that's it. That's it.
Singing, that's what I was saying is that we are together.
Right. What was your question, bro? No, I saw you. About that. All right, bet it. All right. Well, again, thank you all.
All right, thank you, everybody, for coming. And thanks to all of our presenters. Let's give them a round of applause again. And the message that I'm taking is to make old iconography new and to make new iconography immortal. And I know that all of you are taking your own lessons away from here, but this is our first event and we plan to do many others and hope to become friends and community for each other. Thank you.
I loved it. I love all of it. You're just such a genius. How you put people and things together. So I want to invite you to there is going to be the second National Voodoo Festival here. The indigenous people from Benin, when you said Benin, you know, I said, okay. So it's gonna be April 5th and 6th. Look online under a National New Orleans Voodoo Day.org. You will look.
I see.
Oh, good, okay, all righty. So thank you.
Thank you.
I need to walk out with somebody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Here's more events that we're doing, this new alliance, please put your email address here. And then, we'll keep you updated. And any of these Adinkra sheets you can keep.
Sorry to people on Zoom, you don't get dessert.